Good morning, students. Today I will be explaining the third portion of the first chapter, that is the beginning from the beginning of time. I will be explaining to you the two important subpoints, that is the Neolithic period and the life of the Neolithic man. When you go through your text, you will find that I have skipped some points from the text. Those are the dwelling places, food, cloth, art, tools and weapons, which are easy for you to go through it by yourself. So I want you to go through it by yourself. I will not be explaining that portion, but I have directly moved to the Neolithic period. So and today I will be mostly reading out from the text and will be explaining from the text. So as I explain, I want you to refer your textbook and follow with my explanation, which will be easy for you to understand. Alright, so let me start with the Neolithic period. Thousands of years, the human Homo sapiens survived by hunting and gathering. Then about 10,000 years ago, the human became food producers. Human became food producers during the Neolithic period. Neolithic human differ from the Paleolithic predecessors in two respects. The first one is the Paleolithic man made stone tools by grinding and polishing rather than chopping and fracturing. Okay, but the Neolithic man made tools of ground stone which were more durable than those of the weapons which were used by the tools which were used by the Paleolithic men and thus, because of the tools that they use, it facilitated important invention like the plow and the wheel, which appear towards the end of the Neolithic period. The second one is the important difference between this Paleolithic and the Neolithic period is that Neolithic men, they obtained food from hunting animal and gathering plants, whereas during the Neolithic age, humans were transformed into food producers. Even before the Neolithic period, men know the art of agriculture, but they did not shift to agriculture because the hunters, though the hunters had a better knowledge of agriculture thousands of years ago, they did not shift to agriculture because they had a better and dependable food supply than food growing plants, because the population was smaller during the Paleolithic period, and the hunting and depending on hunting and gathering of plants was sufficient for them to survive, and because of that reason they did not shift to cultivation and they did not shift to agriculture. In addition, they had to work less for their food. If we talk about agriculture, it consumes time and we have to spend more energy on working. But during the Paleolithic period, men did not shift to agriculture because they don't want to work for a longer period for agriculture. Another reason for the late beginning of agriculture was the scarcity of plants and animals which are suitable for domestication. Plants and animals were not there. There was scarcity of plants and animals in different regions for the domestication. That is also another reason why agriculture started very late, only during the Neolithic period. The force that made Paleolithic men to shift, the force that made the Neolithic men to move or to shift from hunting to food producer is because of the population pressure. Over tens of thousands of years, number of humans increased slowly, causing the migration from Africa to Asia, Europe, America and Australia. Finally, all the continents except Antarctica were already populated by humans. As the number of humans continued to grow, slowly but steadily, humans were forced to supplement their food by growing food. Agriculture became a full-time occupation in those regions where there were plants or animals could be domesticated. In the process of domestication, the wild animals and the wild plants and animals became large and provide more food. Thus, the hunters spent more and more of their time as food producers rather than gatherers, until they end up as peasants living in the villages. So that is how human during the Paleolithic period shifted from food getter and hunting to the food producer. Now, moving on to the next point is the life of the Paleolithic man. The most important result of the transformation of men from food getters to food producers was the new sedentary way of life. Humans had to settle down in order to care for the new domesticated plants and animals. Once humans started cultivation, they have to settle in one particular place for domestication of those plants and animals. Neolithic village was a basic economic and cultural unit. Indeed, the village remained the basis for a pattern of life that was to prevail until the late 18th century and that persists to the present day in vast underdeveloped regions of the world. In the Neolithic age, every man and women and children, every man, women and children had to work. They had to work and produce food and a few handicrafts. Productivity was very low since people was in the process of learning how to cultivate and how to domesticate. Despite hard labor of the cultivators, famines were common during the Neolithic period. They followed too much or too less rain or spread of plague or pest. Epidemic swept the villages repeatedly as men had no knowledge about sanitation and healthcare. That was only the beginning of the time when humans have learned how to start living in groups. So they don't know any idea about sanitation or healthcare, and because of that, so many epidemic diseases spread, and it leads to the death of many people living together in the village. Life expectancy under this circumstance was exceedingly low, but the birth rate increased. Village population everywhere until famine, epidemic or immigration restored the balance between supply and the number of mouths to feed. Yet the life of the Neolithic village was not at all misery and suffering. This Neolithic period was the time when people made technological progress at a more rapid speed than during the Paleolithic period. During this period, men have learned how to make pots. They began to make mud pots. Later on, they began to bake those mud pots in the fire, which made it more durable. Around 6,000 years BC, earthen pots and pans came into use. First handmade, and then they started making the pots with the help of the wheel. Men have started painting. They not only make the earthen pots, they also started painting pictures on the pottery. Many of the pots discovered has the pictures of man and animal. By the end of the Neolithic period, men in the Near East were building kilns or ovens that could fire pot at a higher temperature and also allow it to glaze. The glazing surface sealed the pottery and prevent seepage or evaporation of the liquids inside the pot. The agriculturists then had vessels that could be used not only for storing their grains but also for cooking and also for keeping liquids such as oil and beer. Similar progress was also made in the field of Textile. The Neolithic men start using fibers of early domesticated flax, cotton and hemp plants and spun and wove the fibers and on spindles and loom, and had gradually evolved. Neolithic villages also learned how to build permanent dwellings. The materials used being wood, mud or grass, depending on the local sources and climate. The settled life also made possible a tribal political structure in place of the individual bands of hunting people. Tribes were made up of inhabitants of the village of a given region. They were identified and distinguished from one another by distinct characteristics of speech and customs. The basic social unit of the Neolithic village customarily was the household consisting of one or more married couples and their children. The extended family was more common than the dependent nuclear family because it was better suited for coping with the problems of everyday living. Another distinctive feature of the Neolithic village was social homogeneity. All families had necessary skills and tools to produce what they needed. All humans were equally important and all had access to the basic natural resources essential for livelihood. Every family was automatically a component of the village community, which owned the farms, pastures and sources of nature. Hence, there was division between land proprietors and landless cultivators in the tribal society. So that is all about the life of the Neolithic men once they started cultivation and started living a settled life. Now, moving on to the next point is the religious belief of the Neolithic man. Like the Paleolithic men began to experience religion, thoughts and feelings during the Neolithic period also. It seems that their religious outlook include concept of soul and spirit belonging to each individual and belief in life after death. They believe in the Neolithic people, they believe in life after death. They opposed evil by, wearing amulets and talismans of beads or pendants. To please the unseen power of nature, men introduced religious rites. They created a class of religious priests who possessed powers of healing, divining, and casting magic spells. The Neolithic men carried religious belief forward and began to worship many gods. They thought that God resides in stones, animals, springs, caves, and mountains. They restored to human sacrifice, animal slaughter, self-mutilation, etc. to please God. They also have belief in life after death became more concrete, and burials as a result became more elaborate. The death was accompanied by funerary items such as pottery, stones, animal offerings, and later with jewels and slaves. Since they believe the life after death, once a person died, they started, putting the earthly materials along with the dead body, like stone tools or animals were offered, or they even put the jewels, or they sometimes even kill their slaves. Some rich or some chieftains, they even kill the slaves and were put inside the grave of a person, because they believe that a person, once they can use those material after their life after death. That's what they believe, and that is the reason why they started doing all those things, and the burial of a dead person, it became more elaborate. So this is all I would be explaining, and with this I have come to the conclusion of this chapter. The rest of the portion, the conclusion, you can, go through it by yourself. And if there is any confusion, if we happen to start with the regular classes, once we come back for the regular class, we can start with the, I can, go for the revision again in the next class. So this is all about the first chapter, and whichever point that I have skipped, I find it, very easy. I know that you will be able to, do it by yourself, and that is the reason why I have not explained those portions. So you can go through it by yourself. Kindly go through the explanation that we are giving and try to, help yourself and give more importance to the explanation videos that we are sending it to you. Thank you so much.